Hello, my name is Ali Yousefi. Welcome to the Test Automation and EasyRepro series. In this video of automating EasyRepro, we're going to look at managing browser dependencies in DevOps. We will quickly look at the prerequisites, browser dependencies within EasyRepro, Azure DevOps Pipeline Agent installed software, GitHub Workflow Agent installed software, perform a demo, and leave with some references. So in this video, the only prerequisites outside of EasyRepro is that you have an Azure DevOps or GitHub hosted agent, and you have a Azure DevOps project or a GitHub repository. So for working with browser dependencies in EasyRepro, the three typical ways I see are using NuGet packages. NuGet packages will be obviously found in the NuGet package manager. Most browser drivers will have them, so Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge will have them. You'll be able to version them, and once you work with it locally or even in Azure DevOps, you can work with NuGet packages to bring in your dependencies. Another technique is to use manual executables, so that means actually going to the Insider downloads, going to the Chromium downloads, and getting the version of the Chrome driver you need. This is helpful if there's no NuGet package available, or if you need to maybe backport to an earlier version of an executable, which would be the driver. Finally, there's third-party helpers. So there's WebDriver Manager, I believe is what it's called. There's other helpers out there. You can look on GitHub and so on, depending if you're writing in Java or C#. You may have certain options available to you. Be mindful of any helpers and how the frameworks that they rely on and how they could maybe potentially conflict with EasyRepro. All right, so Azure DevOps Agent installed software. We have three major versions of OSs. We have Windows-based, Linux-based, and Mac-based. For Windows, I'd recommend using the Windows-latest or Windows- in this case 2019. Depending on when you're watching this, there could be a later version, 2020, 21, etc. For the Windows latest, using that helps us because it already contains Visual Studio in the specifically the executables we need, which would be MS Build to build the source, and VS Test to run the unit testing that we need. The Windows latest image also contains Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, and Mozilla Firefox. Chrome and Edge both contain drivers, Mozilla Firefox possibly, but I have seen that it may not as well. If you want to use the Linux or Mac versions, then we'll need to convert EasyRepro to use .NET Core. For more information on what pre-installed software is on each one of the agents, it can go to that link that you see here on the bottom. And for GitHub Agent installed software, again, it uses the same three OSs and actually uses the same images that we have in Azure DevOps. So the same guidance applies regarding having Chrome drivers, Edge drivers, Firefox, etc. You can go to the same link as before to see what software is installed on the GitHub Agent software. So the question will come up about bringing your own driver versus using a pre-installed driver on the agent. So in the scenario of using the agent installed driver, some of the pros would be to allow the agent to dictate what the driver version is. That's helpful because the driver version and the browser itself will be in parallel. They should be the exact same version. So there's no issue with, say, driver version mismatch. The potential con is that the agent driver may not exist. So if the Edge, for instance, on Linux may not exist, then you'll have to provide it. So just relying on an agent installed driver necessarily would not be the case, depending on what browser you're using and what agent you're using. For NuGet packages, what's the pro of that is, well, it's a control dependency by you. You decide what version of the driver you want by what version of the NuGet package you're using. The con of that is that the browser and the driver you have on your NuGet package may actually mismatch. So the browser that's on the agent we don't control. The driver we can control with NuGet package, but we have to ensure that these match up. Using the driver path variable in EasyRepro, it's flexible, right? It allows us to provide a driver by pointing to a particular directory, be it one that's part of our repo or one that may be part of the agent itself. The con of that is that we potentially have to maintain multiple versions of drivers depending on what is installed on the agent. And finally, using WebDriver Manager or other helpers, the pro of that is maintainability is much higher than having to manage multiple versions of different browser drivers. The con of that is framework conflict. For instance, EasyRepro is on a certain version of .NET Framework, where the WebDriver Manager for, say, C# may rely on .NET Standard or some other framework, and then we get into having to try to adjust EasyRepro and then getting into dependency issues with its packages itself and so on. So be mindful of helpers and just what they require as opposed to what EasyRepro would require. All right, to access the agent's browser and driver version, this is for Azure DevOps specifically. First, you can review the installed software links for the latest version. So the links that we talked about earlier, they'll provide the what version of the browser is on the agent. If you want to determine the version of the driver at runtime, there's agent variables available. There's one called Chrome WebDriver. I've seen it looking like all caps as Chrome WebDriver or as Chrome WebDriver that we're seeing here on the right. Provides a path to the driver, not the version number of Chrome. So if you're looking for what version of Chrome I want, if I'm running 86, 87, this is not going to tell you that. This will get you the directory path to the Chrome WebDriver. So for instance, you can see I'm writing a echo in a directory. You can see the directory is showing C:/Selenium WebDrivers, Chrome driver, and I see the Chrome WebDriver here for the Windows latest. For Mac OS, we echo Chrome WebDriver, again, we get the path to it, which is version 87. And then for Linux, we can see that we get the share here, this Chrome_driver. These may not be available with GitHub runners. So this is where we may have to, again, bring our own browser drivers. Okay, in this demo, we're going to talk about working with the Microsoft Azure DevOps Microsoft hosted agent, working with the agent supplied browser drivers, and then also talk through using multiple versions of the Google Chrome browser driver. Okay, for this demo here, we are going to look at working with specific browser driver versions. Right now, we're showing a local version of EasyRepro unit test. We will look to work not only locally here, but how this could work with the Azure DevOps Microsoft hosted agent. A little background on the Microsoft hosted agent. Part of the agent itself is that one of the benefits of the agent is that it provides pre-installed software. And as part of that pre-installed software, we get the Chrome driver, the Edge driver, the Firefox driver, and the appropriate browsers to go along with it. And the versions actually match up very well. Unfortunately, we don't control which version and how often that's updated. So we have to be mindful of the agent that's in DevOps may have a different version than what we're running locally as a developer. As a developer, my Edge driver, for instance, may update itself to version 87, 88, etc., where the Microsoft agent on Azure DevOps may still be at 85, 86. So to handle that, we want to look at how we can work with the driver path setting within EasyRepro test settings options. What this will allow us to do is to override the NuGet package we would be using typically. So we have typically running locally, you'll have a particular NuGet package you'll use for your browser. So in our case here, we may want to, let's take a look at it. We may have a particular version installed. So for instance, here I have the Chrome driver, as you can see. And this version is 87.0. So on, which works fine with the version of Chrome that I have locally. If we go look at the version of Chrome I have, we can see that we have the same version 87 and so on here. So this works well. If you run into any sort of version mismatching, take a look at some of the other videos. There's one in particular for troubleshooting EasyRepro and how to update the driver. So in this case, locally, this will work fine. But unfortunately, the Azure DevOps agent does not necessarily have what we want on here. So we'll have to take a look at exactly what may be in there. Here I'll show you a build. One thing you can do to see what version software is on here, there's a couple of thoughts, but there's a link that I've covered earlier, but also each time we run the, the job itself, we can see the operating system, and then we can also see the virtual environment that comes with a link to the software. By clicking that, you can see the software, this GitHub Markdown file. You can do a quick Control F and type in Chrome and see that at this time we have 86.0, 86.0, Edge, and so on. So we would have a mismatch here with the local NuGet package for Google Chrome being version 87, the one installed on the agent being version 86. You may have run into this, maybe that's why you've stumbled upon this demo here. So what we're going to look at is how can I continue using the localized version for as a developer. I don't want to have to downgrade my package just to work with the agent in DevOps. So how can I work both locally and in Azure DevOps? And we're going to look at using the pre-installed software, and then also how can we work with multiple versions. So first off, we see that the agent includes Google Chrome and Google Chrome Driver 86. This agent is the Windows 2019, which we'll be using for the demo. If I go back to my pipeline here, I can see the operating system and the virtual environment here. On the agent job, you can always look at that, and you can see Windows 2019, Windows latest, etc. And so each one of those has that software. You can see what it is. So when we have that, what we can do now is look at how to find out what version of the pipeline we have. So in this case here, I'm showing you this is a PowerShell script, but what I'm doing here is I'm actually reading from a agent variable that's provided on Azure DevOps. And this agent variable is called Chrome WebDriver, and it gets me the location of the Chrome driver.exe. And it looks like this. And so if I want to edit this particular step, I can see inside of here that I'm doing a $ open parentheses Chrome WebDriver, and this will tell me where Chrome driver is installed. This is the Chrome driver, not the browser itself. These match up according to the documentation. So Chrome installed version is Chrome WebDriver is what I'm writing on the pipeline. And if I go look again, let's just go back here to the logs, we can see that it says Chrome installed version is this. So this will be a static directory to the Chrome driver.exe. There's some techniques if you want to read the version, which we can use a little bit later. So I have this $Chrome WebDriver agent variable that I can use. If I want to leverage that within EasyRepro, I have to do a couple of things. One, I need to pull up my software here. I need to first go to my EasyRepro run settings. If you're using Azure DevOps, you would be using the run settings file. If you're not using that, look at how that'll be used, and I'll show you here in a second. What you'll need to do is add a new parameter in the test run parameters node. Add a parameter called driver's path. This can be whatever you want it to be called, but I recommend something like that to keep it kind of descriptive. So create this parameter, driver's path. You can leave it empty. Inside of a unit test you're running, you can have a class here. Inside the class, if you haven't done the run settings file, you'll want to use the class initialize decoration here to tell the test context to run through this method and set some class level members. So in this case, we're using test context. Inside of test context, we'll be passing in a variable called driver's path, which we will set to driver's path. Inside of our test, we're just going to go to bing.com, but in here, what I'm doing is I'm using the driver's path that I passed in from the test context, which will be from the Azure DevOps pipeline. I'll set the test settings shared options.driver path. At first glance, setting the options looks like it would work, but for some reason I was not seeing that this replicated correctly. I would recommend looking at the shared options first and falling back over to the options. In my case, I'm simply setting them both. and I'm using interactive browser, this would be the same as using the web client if you're using the UCI apps here, and simply going to bing.com. So by doing this, I've now set my test to work with this particular driver path. If you want to continue running locally, you can attempt to do something like change your driver path here to your say bin folder or where your exe would be. So you can see here I have a folder here for exes. Let me actually pull this over here. What you can see in here is that what I've done is I have for my bin folder here, I have a deep inside the debug folder, I have a drivers and then Chrome, and I have 86, 87, 88, 89, etc. If you wanted to, you could kind of work the same way that the EasyRepro out of the box works, which is to use the current directory. So it'd be something like this here. So you could test to see if driver path is null. So maybe something like if, driver path, let's see, string is null or empty. And simply set the test settings to be, or better yet, to set this to be this, right? And you could, again, add to it, maybe since say we were doing the driver piece to it, what was it? I think it was drivers, Chrome, and then whatever version you wanted to point to. And this could be hard coded, and you could figure out a better way there if you want to kind of work locally, or you could just not set this altogether. Not setting this, by not setting this, if I do it like maybe like this, if it's not null or empty, I could do something like this. Here, we can simply pull this out and do this. And so what this will let me do is now I can, if driver path is passed in, I'll use driver path. If it's not passed in, I'll stick with the out of the box one, which will be from your NuGet package. So running it like this may actually work much better for both local and Azure DevOps. Regardless, you need to set this, and you have to set the driver path both here and the run settings, because we will be overriding that. So we'll move over to Azure DevOps, get that pulled up. And we'll take a look at our pipeline here. In the pipeline, we'll go to our VS test. And if you want help setting this up, there's another video that's regarding setting up the build pipeline. It'll explain how to set up the test run parameters here. What we're going to do is we're going to add a new parameter, driver's path. And instead of hard coding a variable that we may have passed in, we're going to use the agent supplied variables. So $ open parentheses, Chrome WebDriver. So driver's path here. This will allow us to pass this in. Once we have that, we will commit our changes. We'll run the pipeline. Let's go take a look at a successful run. And we can see if we look at the agent job here, we can see that we are writing, we found our test, we have one test, and we have we're writing to our TRX file. If we go look at our TRX file here, we will set this to passed. Look at this. And inside of here, our attachments, we can click on this, move this over, and we can see our driver's path. It says Selenium WebDriver, Chrome driver. So this is using the Chrome WebDriver agent variable. Now, for GitHub, this works a little bit different. We're going to have to be mindful of it. I'm not seeing a specific Chrome WebDriver agent variable inside of the GitHub runners. So you could look at most likely doing what we're doing earlier with the localized version to bring in the version you need to compare. right? So in this case, you could set a variable. Which you could then kind of set up here. So for Azure DevOps, stick with the Chrome WebDriver piece. For GitHub runners, go ahead and look at utilizing this. To future proof, you may want to eventually work with something like this. One of the benefits of this is that you don't rely on the agent itself having the driver. The downfall of it, the con of it, is that you still need to know what version of Chrome or Edge that the agent has installed on it. So we have to find out ways that we can do that. And unfortunately, one of the easiest ways is still a manual way, which is looking at the documentation. So I hope this was helpful, and please reach out if you have any additional questions. Thank you. Finally, we'll leave with some references, including the EasyRepro GitHub repository and the test automation and EasyRepro blog series. Number 5, adding EasyRepro test to Azure DevOps. These links will be in the description of the video. Thank you for watching this edition of the test automation and EasyRepro series. You can find my contact information in the slide here, as well as in the description below. Thanks.